right, hello and welcome back to San Juan County Council's Tuesday, August 11th, 2020 meeting. We have called the meeting to order and taken a short recess. My apologies for the recess. We're now back in session. Just to make sure everyone's on the line. Mr. Thomas, are you on the line?
I am.
Mr. Watson?
I'm here.
Stevens?
I'm here.
Great, thank you. All right, so couple things. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agendas? Any additions or changes to the agenda for today?
Nope.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think we should add to today's agenda discussion of the CARES grant agreement between San Juan County and the EDC.
That would be great. Let's do it. Is that all right if we do it after number 3 and before number 4? Could we talk about a CDBG grant application scheduling and public hearing? Just do it after that.
Yes, whenever it's convenient for you.
You all right with that, Council?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Thomas?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Before we get to the minutes, I'd like, do you guys mind if we touch calendars real quick for council? In the past, we've been meeting every week on Tuesdays to discuss ongoing COVID. What I would like to have us do, at least in the interim, is to follow the schedule calendar that we had set up in the beginning of the year, and we can modify it if necessary based on how things change in and out. Is that all right with council?
Yes, fine. Yes.
Yep.
We had tentatively scheduled for the rest of the year Monday meetings. I'm going to take those off for now. We may need to touch base in October about depending on how the budget works out for 21. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so September and October Mondays, we're going to take off the agenda at this point with opportunity to bring them on later on. All right, thank you very much. Have you had an opportunity to look at the minutes?
Yes.
Yep.
Would you entertain a motion for the minutes of July 27th, please?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the minutes for the San Juan County Council meeting of July 27th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes for July 27th, 2020. Any comments or questions? Without seeing any, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much. Have you both had an opportunity to look at the consent agenda?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, if there aren't any questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda for the San Juan County Council meeting of Tuesday, August 11th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda for Tuesday, August 11th, 2020. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much. Mr. Stevens, real quick on correspondence, were we waiting for something to do with either monument or Yetnoy? It's been a week, but I thought we had something going on. You clear with all that?
For what two things?
Were we working on any kind of correspondence to go to the federal government regarding noise or the monument?
No, I think we've already done them.
Okay, great. Just wanted to follow up because I couldn't remember if we'd finished that or not. Thank you very much for that work.
Yeah, we letter about the appointment process and that they're lacking tribal and local government on the MAC, and on the Navy we did that one too.
Great. I apologize. I just wanted to make sure it was on the back of my head for something we needed to accomplish. You're always one step ahead of me, Mr. Stevens. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. At this point, we will look at public comment. I have a bunch of letters that I will summarize, but let's start with people who are on the line. If anyone is calling in for the 9:15 delayed public hearing on the Shoreline Master Program, if you have a comment regarding that, if you could save it for that point. this point, let me start with, let's see. Mr. Gomez, I assume that you are just listening. Okay. Next one I have is Kyle Davies. Do you have any public comment at this point? Kyle, are you just listening or do you have public comment? Okay. Peter Lane, you're next in the line. Do you have any public comment or are you just listening?
I missed that, but I'm assuming you said my name, Peter Lane, and I am just listening. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Minor, you're on the line. Are you just listening or do you have any public comment?
No public comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I just unmuted someone. It says San Juan County guest 360-378-7850. Do you have any public comment or are you just listening?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. Tina Whitman, I assume you're for the public hearing, but here's an opportunity if you'd like to provide comment.
Yes, for the SMP hearing. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And the final caller I have is a wireless caller. Just unmuted you. Phone number is 360-366-6186. Do you have any public comment?
Not at this time.
Great, thank you very much. All right, that is all of the call-in people. Just as a reminder, if you want to watch this at home, San Juan County has a live streaming video YouTube channel, as well as you can watch it through our AV capture on our county website. I have a bunch of emails that I will summarize very quickly. There's one from the Waldron community meeting. Dear County Council, the current logging operations in Waldron is causing consternation and disquiet among the local populations. Many observed the operations inconsistent with the sub-area plan. Other fills permitting process was flawed. Please consider. The second one is from Denna Royal. I think it's Freddie Harbor. Our taxes pay for county park. Local residents trying to exercise, recreate responsibly should have a priority for parking, not out-of-state tourist companies. And the title is County Park Renting Parking Spots to Tour Companies. And there's an attached photo about one of the biking companies. Rosa Blair, Dear County Council, I think this is on Freddie Harbor, San Juan. A question on who has jurisdiction of the police department. I've seen our sheriff on multiple occasions interacting with people without a mask. Who would I contact about that? Next one is from Orcas Island Chamber of Commerce in support of EDC's work for business recovery and trades training, especially during COVID-19. Next one's from Katie Gray from Orcas Island. Is against the proposed Village Inn construction project in East Sound and very concerned about disturbance of midden artifacts and burial grounds being in the proximity of the shoreline. Please don't approve. Next one's from Ann Berto, SEPA determination 217 Main Street. Dear Mr. Maycock, it's come to my attention that pros develop Main Street, which is the same project, including underground parking. It's also maybe an ancient Lummi burial ground. In this case, excavation for the garage foundation would be an issue. Rebecca Gray, I think, is following with what Katie Gray said regarding the issue. Business owner in town doesn't support the program regarding the three-story building in Sound. The next one is Janice Weimer, a proposal Main Street, Orcas Island, same sentiment. Doesn't support the third floor massive boutique hotel, space for retail and underground parking. A repeat of the Waldron meeting. Lovell Pratt, I think Lovell Pratt, ship noise reduction, San Juan, Southern resident killer whales. There's an attached report presentation, Northwest Seaport Alliance on implementation of the task force. regarding, I guess, sea noise and speed. And then there was a Dan Gottlieb on Orcas regarding Moran State Park, 2 vans of bicycle tourists at the park. Looks like they're together. Is this allowed? So again, just for everyone, that we've summarized this for the record, but each council member has received these emails and have read them, and we're just again acknowledging that these were sent in to council. All right, so at this point we'll go into our public hearing. It is now 9:37, and we were starting our delayed 9:15 public hearing, which is a continuation from July 28th. Public testimony will be accepted. This joint public hearing with Ecology is on the Shoreline Master Program periodic update public hearing on an ordinance to update the Shoreline Master Program regulations, amending San Juan County Code 18.20.20, 18.20.140, 18.190, 18.50.20, 18.50.30, 18.50.40, 18.50.50, 18.50.450, 18.50.540, 18.50.550, 18.50.600, 18.8.110, and 15.12.30, with Eric Shook, Director of Community Development, and Adam Zach, Planner 3. Adam, are you leading this?
I am, yeah, thank you.
Great. And just, it's been a few weeks. If you could give us a quick summary of, we had the meeting a few weeks ago, the public hearing, and what we asked for the continuance and what we want to accomplish, please.
Sure. So at the public hearing on the 28th, council had kind of 6 points that you wanted staff to follow up on. So the first was a process of the notice of proposed use for those existing non-conforming barge landing sites, temporary barge landing sites. And then you asked for what would be involved in creating a list of existing non-conforming temporary barge landing sites. Then notice of requirements for administrative shoreline substantial development permits. So what's changing in 1880 for that administrative process. Then consistency of those changes with other parts of Chapter 1880 of the San Juan County Code. And then a follow-up on tree cutting in the shoreline, what permits are required, and then a summary of those proposed changes that were kind of a late addition to the process for archaeological and historic resources. For the first issue, for a notice process for proposed existing non-conforming temporary barge landing sites, we provided an updated ordinance that has some draft language about providing notice. That would be on a form specified by the director, similar to our vacation rental certificate of compliance. This form would not be like, we wouldn't be issuing a decision on it. We would just be receiving it, and then we could keep track of where those are occurring. They would be required to submit the form 10 business days before the proposed landing. And again, it would certify that they won't include any new development with those, with that temporary barge landing site, that the site was legally established as a barge landing site, and that it will conform to all of the code for those temporary barge landing sites. Next, in the draft ordinance, we proposed some new language to create a list of existing non-conforming barge landing sites that would be administratively determined. So this would be kind of a less involved process where the director would put together that list annually and update it. And then written requests to either be taken off or added to the list could be submitted to the department, and the director would ultimately make that decision. And then we would publish that list every year, so the public would have access to it. And that was the least involved process. So adopting it as an administrative decision will reduce the review time, and we won't have to do like a legislative action like if we were we adopted it into the comp plan, then you would have to adopt that change every time we made an amendment there. We would have to do that by ordinance. So this is a little lighter on that process. Finally, or not finally, we've got a couple more. In ordinance sections 4, 13, and 14, we made some slight changes to that administrative shoreline substantial development permit process, and that those requirements are still there for posting notice to the site, publishing notice in the newspaper of a proposed development, and then let's see here. Make sure I've got all of this here, and then the 30-day comment period. So one of the public comments that we received at the public hearing was a concern that by making these public pedestrian pathways and residential accessory structures an administrative shoreline substantial development permit rather than a hearing examiner decision, that the commenters were concerned that we would lose that comment period, but we made sure that all of the comment period and notice requirements are still in there for that. On a similar note, we reviewed for consistency with Chapter 1880 San Juan County Code, which is the permit process section of the county code, and made sure that our changes for the administrative shoreline substantial development permit were consistent with the other provisions in that section. And in that review, we realized there was another section of San Juan County Code 1880-020 that needed to be amended. And so that's included now in the draft ordinance in section 13. Then next, for tree cutting in the shoreline, we clarified that if the cutting of timber is authorized by a shoreline permit or a certificate of exemption, that we don't require an additional permit for that tree cutting, an additional shoreline permit. If it crosses over into, if it has more than 5,000 board feet of timber being cut, then the state will still require a forest practices permit, which is above and beyond what the, if you were just cutting trees for like your single family home. And that's a state process. And then finally, looking at the archaeological and historic resources, we amended the proposed language slightly at the request of the Swinomish tribe to make sure that any affected Native American nations, not just an affected nation, can comment on or apply for shoreline stabilization to protect archaeological and historic resources. Other than that, there were some slight housekeeping edits throughout that we highlighted in the draft ordinance so that you could see where we made those changes. And that's about it for what you asked for at the last public hearing. So if you have any questions, we can answer them at this time.
Mr. Watson, do you have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I had a couple. So on the tree cutting, I just want to be clear that if it's incidental to another use, that the tree cutting is included in the permit for the other use?
Correct. So if you have a permit to build your house in the shoreline, you don't have to get a second shoreline permit to cut down the trees to build that house. That'll all be included in that development.
Right. And then I noticed one of the public comments was about horseback riding on cattle. Okay.
Nothing in the SMP would preclude horseback riding on
before the meeting. There is concern that the SMP update changes the uses that are allowed at South Beach and American Camp, and that's not true, correct?
Not as it relates to horseback riding or pedestrian use of the beach. No, right. Neither of those things would be impacted by this.
Okay. So again, that's probably just misinformation that was out there in the community that was stimulating some of the comments. And thank you for the list. It's quite extensive.
Uh-huh. Well, that would just be the list that was attached with the attachment D. That's kind of what we'll use as the starting point, and kind of bring those together if we end up adopting an administrative determination for that.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Those were my questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Stevens?
I didn't have any questions.
And
Thank
I
you
don't
for
even,
following up on that stuff.
yes, Adam, thank you for turning this around so quickly. I don't have any questions either. Mr. Thomas, do you have anything before we take public comment?
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this point, we will go into the public comment section, public testimony part of this public hearing. Again, this is a joint public hearing on Shoreline Master Program periodic update with the Department of Ecology and San Juan County. Hearing on the ordinance and updating the shoreline program regulations. Tina, I assume, I'm going to unmute you, I assume you have a comment. Tina?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is Tina Whitman with Friends of the San Juans. I first wanted to thank staff and council for their work on the SMP update on the topic of barges. My comments are kind of in three areas. First, the notification process, kind of the start of that decision tree, as you were all talking about last week. I think it's a great framework for that. I would request that you ask for some information on the site itself. The checkboxes seem pretty simple and like everyone will just check them. So some information on the site, is it actually a non-conforming site, and on the location, as well as some information on the proposed use. That'll help staff determine whether it actually is on the right track in the decision tree, just with this notification, and also will help in the required assessment of cumulative impacts later. I also feel like some level of public notice, again, as we noted, there's nearly 100 of these on the current versions of multiple lists that are out there. So whether it's notifying adjacent property owners or having some very easy to find place on the website where these notifications as they come in and those 10 business days ahead of time are all posted so that at least people have the opportunity to find the information. And then on the topic of an inventory, I get not wanting to do a huge public process, but I think the point of the inventory is to make it accurate. And so I would encourage you at the beginning of the process, maybe the first time you're really putting this list together, to have a public process and let folks provide their information. Some sites that are on that list right now, for example, were authorized by a conditional use permit that expired, 15 years ago and aren't actually a non-conforming list. It'd be nice to sort of start with a clean list in one process instead of everybody having to provide comments for individual sites and having the director review those. Although doing that annually seems like an easier way. I'd also encourage a map. There was a lot of talk about the list, but no map. And that would help sort of with the public understanding and also, again, of tracking of cumulative impacts, and encouraging that all barge sites be on that map. You could color code whether they're temporary, non-conforming, or a different site. And then my final comment is something that hasn't been addressed, that were in our comments from July from Friends of the San Juans, really requesting that the more specific section of code under the Shoreline Master Program that applies to log handling facilities be used, and that we're not using this temporary barge landing for these log handling facilities. As you're hearing from the watering community, sort of this permit process isn't really robust enough and does not have the level of public process or review to really handle this kind of use. And it's kind of an example of why we need some of these other processes that you're putting in place. But also there's a very specific section of the code that is more detailed. And, the way that the code works is that those more specific provisions are what applies. And so we would really request that you clarify that this log handling is to be intended to be managed under that section of code, not under this temporary barge landing. And we support the changes of the Twin Emission, of course, adding that section to close the loophole for shoreline armoring. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Great, thank you. So none of the emails that we had that came in were regarding the shoreline update. Is there anyone else online in our Skype call who is interested in providing public comment regarding this public hearing? Please just unmute and begin speaking. All right, I'm going to ask one more time. Is there anyone else who has called in who would like to provide public comment regarding this public hearing, this joint public hearing on the Shoreline Master Program? All right, well, not seeing any. Not seeing at this time, we will close the public hearing with the public comment section of the public hearing with the right to reopen. All right, so council, Mr. Watson, do you have any comments, questions? Bill has said, sorry, he's lost sound. Mr. Stevens, I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to pop in and see what we can do to help Mr. Watson here.
I do have something, or I'd like two things. One is in regards to Tina's comments and the temporary barge landings. I'd be interested in I know that you were involved in, or at least took an interest in the process for Janaki on Waldron. So I'd be interested of any thoughts that you have. And the second thing is with Ecology on the line, do they have any comments?
We'll start with Ecology. Is there any comments from Ecology? Okay. Regarding my personal opinion, I think if the code allows what the barge landing process is in order for us to, in this case, on the Waldron case specifically, was to harvest to be in compliance with their DFL forest plans. To me, it's just that the code allows it, then we support it. I don't have any, my only issue was really if there's historical barge landings that people use for consistent activities like bringing in fuel or groceries or supplies, that those be able to be intact. Other than that, I support the program. If the permit, I really think that the folks who are doing the work should be more, maybe more neighborly and not work at odd hours that people may be trying to sleep or with their families. No, I don't have an opinion. I support what we're doing here. Did that answer your question, Mr. Stevens?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we needed to alter anything, because it seems like there was a lot of notification and a lot of discussion before that project ever got started. That's all.
Yeah, I feel like that the company that came forward and the property owners that were trying to do the work did a lot of due diligence to get permits. I think we could have maybe, like I said, noodled a little bit so that the high tides, you're not doing it at 3 a.m. And that's maybe part of the conditional use part of the permit. But anyway, all right. I'm going to hold on one second. I'm going to see if Bill has sound yet.
Okay.
This is Bill. Mic check.
Hello, Bill. Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I just totally lost sound. All right, I'm back.
right, sorry about that.
My apologies for the technical glitch.
All right, Bill, so just to get you caught up, did you hear Ms. Whitman's testimony?
I did not, sorry. That's when I lost down.
Tina, I don't know if you'd like to just give a quick summary for Bill, since you were the only commenter. I would like him to hear your comments if you'd like to repeat them or summarize them.
Let's see, I'll try to really summarize. One was on the notification process. Thank you for putting sort of a start to the decision tree. We would request that some information on the site and also on the proposed use be included instead of just the simple checkboxes, so that staff could assess whether it was actually on the right permit track, and also have some information for the cumulative impact tracking. We would request some sort of public notice, not a formal public comment period, but even just on the county website, that all of those, whatever these are called, papers or certificates or whatever, the barge uses would be posted so that people could find those, potentially thinking about informing adjacent property owners. On the concept of the inventory, we would request that there would be a public process at the beginning of that. The whole point of the inventory is for it to be accurate, and to sort of have everyone have to do that one at a time seems cumbersome, although the one, yearly updates and people being able to request changes that way seems great. And then on the log handling facility, again, really requesting, and the Waldron community one, I think, is an example. There was no required public notice as any of that part of that process. It is true that the public learned about it, but there was no formal public notification or participation or hearing or any of those sorts of things, which I think is adding to some of the consternation of folks. There also was no conditional use permit. It was handled under this temporary barge section. So again, we're requesting that it be made clear that the log handling facilities are handled under that section of code. There's a different section of code for that, not the temporary barge landing. And I think a lot of these issues that are coming up with this other, with this use, kind of this case study on Waldron, are really showing that that we really need to handle them under that more detailed section of code that has an actual public process, because this one did not. It is true that the public were involved, but there was no formal notification or public comment period. I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Tina, thank you for the summary. Sorry to put you back on the spot. I just thought it was important that Bill hear your comments. And then,
that's okay.
And Mr. Watson, so Mr. Stevens asked about comments regarding what's going on in Waldron, and I just provided my thoughts that they went through a process. I think it was a relatively lengthy process. If the code allows it, then I think they should be able to do it. Just hopefully we could maybe plan a little bit differently so we have an idea of exactly when those temporary uses would happen. And so there may not be 3 a.m. high tide work being done that could disturb some of the neighbors. Mr. Stevens, did you have anything else for Mr. Watson that I may not have covered?
No.
Okay, so I think we can move forward with the vote. Are there any other comments from staff?
No.
Actually, this is Erica. We put this together relatively on a short time frame, and so if you do decide to take action today, we would like you to take action in such a way so that we would be able to give you some, be able to clean up anything in the ordinance that needs to be cleaned up with the prosecuting attorney's office.
Great. Thank you very much, Erica. Mike, is there any comments that you have?
No, I don't. I think, well, my only comment is echoing your DFL comment. So I think there's a way to do this effectively and efficiently. But I want to thank staff for putting this together in short order.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
Mr. Chair, if this has still got to go through the prosecuting attorney's office, should we wait to take action until that's occurred?
I don't want to summarize what Erica said, but I think she was just saying that if there's some typos and things that they find, that we can allow them to clean that up if there are not any significant changes. Is that correct, Erica?
That's correct. You could approve it in substance and just allow us to make any cleanup changes that need to be made as typos and accept those types of things.
Would you prefer us to postpone the hearing for one more week so you can have it in a form that you're happy with?
It doesn't matter to me.
All right, thank you very much. So, Council, are you okay with considering a motion for approval with the understanding that some minor corrections may need to be made after final review with the prosecuting attorney, or would you like to a continuation of this public hearing to have that work completed in advance? I'm comfortable going forward today, but leave it up to you.
I'm fine, but Bill brought it up, so.
Okay. Then I guess you want a motion then, huh?
A motion for either a continuation or approval of the document.
Right. Mr. Chair, I move we approve the Shoreline Master Program periodic update ordinance to update the Shoreline Master Program regulations, amending San Juan County Code sections as listed.
Second.
You have a motion, a second to approve our Shoreline Master Program periodic update. The ordinance is an update to Shoreline Master Program regulations, amending San Juan County Code 18.20.20, 18.20.140, 18.20.190, 18.50.20, 18.50.30, 18.50.40, 18.50.50, 18.50.450, 18.50.540, 18.50.550, 18.50.600, 18.8.110, and 15.12.30. Council, is it all right to say with minor revisions coordinated between the prosecuting attorney's office and DCD?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments?
No.
All right, I'd like to thank DCD and all of the people who provide public comment for this program. I think especially the last edition regarding the shoreline protection to be brought forward, that DCD came at the last minute with us. Thank you very much for bringing that information forward.
Thanks.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you very much to everyone. All right.
Adam has gotten trial by fire. Trial by fire.
Yeah.
Well, I think
just a bit.
Pass through, and then a COVID time with on Zoom is a really good program. So thank you very much, Erica and Ecology. All right, it's 10:05. I know we had a little bit of late start. Do either of you want to break, or should we keep going?
Keep going.
Keep going.
All right, so our next discussion is our COVID-19 coronavirus emergency response update. Kyle, you go to the beginning, or is Mark Tompkins?
Good morning, Council. Kyle Dodd. I will start. So, thank you. Welcome back. I will say that it has been a quiet week and a half as far as new cases go. As of this morning, we had 30 positive cases. I did just get an email from Dr. James since the meeting started that we are investigating a new case. Don't have any other information outside of that, so we will be likely at 31 before day's end. But I wanted to spend some time to highlight the hot topic number 28 that was sent out yesterday afternoon, which summarizes our experience to date, as of yesterday afternoon, with the 30 cases that we've had in the county. And I would encourage everybody to go through that in a little more detail. I know that there have been a lot of questions, both from the public over a period of the last several weeks, wanting some additional information and breakout of those cases. It is a balance between our need to protect patient privacy and respect their wishes, but also provide as much information as we can to meet those, again, public requests. So Brennan and his team did a great job of summarizing the information that our operations folks handed over to him. I'm just going to highlight a few of those points in that document, and then would again encourage everybody to read that, which is linked to our COVID-19 webpage. So there's been a lot of discussion around where are these cases coming from? Are they originating outside the county or within San Juan County? And what we can say is that 15 cases originated outside San Juan County. 7 cases were transmitted within the county. And of those 7 cases in county, 6 were a result of close indoor family contact with an existing case, and the 7th resulted from close contact with an infected visitor. So to highlight and summarize that, we don't have community transmission in San Juan County to date. We haven't seen that. That hasn't been our experience. The majority of cases have come from residents who've traveled off island and returned home, which further highlights the need for us to remain vigilant with our social distancing, our face coverings, and exercising caution when we're traveling. I wanted to highlight secondary cases. So we've talked before about this concept of reproductive value or R value, and whether that's above 1. Above 1 means there's likely to be exponential growth. And so for every 1 case, if you're above 1, say 1.5, you expect 1.5 cases for every case. Well, our experience has been only 3 of our positive cases have resulted in additional cases. So, and a very extremely low reproductive rate. And credit really goes to the cases themselves and the close contacts. And also our team who have jumped on these cases right away, literally phoning the evening and after hours when we receive notification to ensure that everybody understands what their obligation is to either isolate if they're the case, and if there are a close contact, to quarantine. And I want to commend everybody who has been through that experience, and it's really resulted in a community benefit because, again, we haven't seen that reproductive rate or several additional cases from each positive case, except for those that are expected, again, those 7 that were from close contact, family contact there. Yes.
So so we have 30 cases in the county right now.
Yes.
And you said 15 cases outside and 6 within the family, and then there was an additional one. So that's 22. How about the other 8?
Yeah, so I'll continue on with that accounting. Of the 8 remaining cases, we have that 3 appear to be false positives, and we're in varying degrees of following up on the thread of that last false positive. So according to the CDC, there is a strict definition to classify a case as a false positive. In order to meet that classification, after a positive PCR, or polymerase chain reduction, a lab test, you have to have two negative PCRs, and then a negative antibody test. And we've gone through that process with 2 out of the 3, and the third has a negative antibody test after a positive. So that's 3. 2 were likely infected by a common source. We're unclear if that was inside or outside of county. 1 we were unable to determine based on the patient history and interview. And then 2 were likely outside the county due to travel history, but it was hard to pinpoint the exact cause of transmission. So that rounds out the 30 cases. And again, there's more detail in the hot topic linked on the website. So wanted to talk a little bit about symptomatic versus asymptomatic, and 24 out of the 30 cases were showing symptoms and got tested as a result of that. Only 3 cases were found during asymptomatic testing, and upon interviewing of 2 out of those 3 cases, 2 of them had previously shown symptoms. So again, wanted to highlight that we don't have a high rate of asymptomatic positive people in the community spreading disease, which again reinforces that no community spread notion. And again, looking backwards, anything can happen from here moving forward, but just summarizing what our experience has been. Wanted to highlight the contact tracing work. So again, this is the work that I have been touting over the last several months of our operations team. Can't say enough about that group that does the case investigations and identifies the close contacts, and then once the close contacts are identified, follows up with those individuals for 14 days since the last exposure. And we have interacted with 147 close contacts resulting from the 30 cases. And in some cases, there were 0 close contacts, and in one case in particular, there were 12 close contacts. So quite a wide range there. And then again, I'll just reiterate that all of the cases known to be acquired in the county came from close household contact with either an infected family member or in the one case, a close household contact with a visitor. So encourage everybody to read that for some additional information, but wanted to be responsive and give kind of a summary of what our experience has been to date to be responsive. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a couple of graphics here.
Hey, Kyle?
Yes.
Real quick, kind of summarizing what I think you just said, and if you could please correct me, but I think it's really important for the community to realize that while we need to be very vigilant when there's tourists and visitors here, just as we've always been, that we cannot let our guard down with our family and friends and neighbors and people who have come to visit us. And I know I'm seeing it in the community that people around visitors are very vigilant and very aware of the potential threat, but sometimes it seems okay if you know the person that you're with. So I think it's, again, important for all of us to continue to wash our hands, to provide social distancing, to limit our exposure to more than 5 people, et cetera. So is that a good summary?
That's a very good summary. So again, just be cautious. We all have family. We all want to visit with those family members, but we can do it in a safe way as long as we know the risks, understand the risks, and we're doing it using social distancing, using our face coverings, and good hand hygiene. There are ways to prevent that potential spread. So.
Great, thank you.
Yep, you bet. So this dashboard here, again, this is the governor's dashboard, and I have San Juan County highlighted here, and just to show the fact that we are currently meeting all 5 metrics. And we are one of a handful of counties that are currently meeting all those metrics, again, for newly diagnosed cases within the last 2 weeks per population, number of individuals tested for each new case over the prior week, percentage of individuals testing positive during the past week, and then our hospital bed capacity. So we're currently meeting all of those metrics. I will say, while I'm on this page, one of the updates that came out last week was from the governor, who released guidance for in-person learning for both public and private schools. That has been a hot topic for us for the last several weeks, and our team has been working closely with our local school districts. But the governor's plan ties school reopening, or at least recommendations for in-person teaching, to this first metric here. And there is a decision tree based on the number of new cases over the prior 2 weeks, whether a school would be low, moderate, or high risk. And you can understand the complication as quickly as we have seen these numbers change, how a school district would have to react to that. So my understanding is that our school districts are talking about not doing in-person learning until after the first of the year. Some of the school boards have voted on that. Others are still discussing that. But just wanted to touch on that as an update and an announcement that came out last week for the governor that is tied to this metric there. Jumping over to the Department of Health dashboard, I wanted to show this epi curve again. So it's been a couple weeks since we've seen this at a council meeting. And again, we're moving down the far side of that second peak, and that trend has seemed to continue. So with the last confirmed date here, we were at a 7-day rolling average of 613 new cases in the state. And again, these gray bars are just incomplete data so far. So we're moving in the right direction there as far as new cases go. The last thing I wanted to share with you is this statewide situation report that came out over the weekend. And I know there was one question the last time I presented to council regarding the R value, or reproductive rate. And this graph here shows what the current data, and when I say current, I mean it's almost 3 weeks old. So the situation report published on the 7th that came out over the weekend is looking back to the data ending on July 22nd. So we are a few weeks old now, but this is the latest information we have. This is showing the R values of both Western Washington in the purple, and you can see that we are trending in the right direction. We are still above 1. And then the R value for Eastern Washington in the red, which it has never been below 1 except for this report. It got close a couple times early on, but it is finally below 1. And again, reproductive value below 1 indicates that as long as the trend continues, there will be a decrease in the number of cases. And above 1 means that if we don't make changes, we're likely to still see growth in the number of cases seen for every 1 positive. So there are a couple bars in here denoting some actions taken by the governor. 623 was the statewide masking order, and then that went into effect on July 7th, where a business was absolutely required to ensure that masks were worn inside prior to serving those individuals. So they make some general ties to those actions and these rates here, but also indicate that it is a limited data set and might be too soon to make any final conclusions. So wanted to share that, and you can see the trends back to March as we have worked through this. So I think I'm going to stop there and open it up to any questions.
Mr. Stevens?
I don't have any questions. In your first part of your presentation, though, along with washing your hands, is keeping your pods small.
Thank you. Yep, very good. So that social interaction or keeping your bubbles small, that's going to minimize again that outside contact as well.
And I have nothing else. Thanks, Kyle.
Mr. Watson?
No questions. Thanks, Kyle.
Kyle, I have one quick question. When you opened this up, you were talking about the San Juan County dashboard and the different metrics there, and you said that we're meeting all of the metrics. And I guess my question is, for what? I mean, I understand it's good. It's we're in a good place, but what does that mean? We're meeting the metrics.
So I'm going to share. I'm going to attempt to share one more time.
Sorry about that.
It keeps clicking off on me. There we go. I think I have it. Yeah. So I'll just move ahead. So those metrics are again the state metrics pertaining to the phase that we're in. So in phase 2, we are meeting the metrics that the state has defined around that phase for reopening.
Kyle, I don't think your screen is showing.
Yeah, thanks, Doc. I attempted to reload it a couple times, and I just decided to move on without it.
So basically, you're saying that the phase we're in is the right phase for us, and we're meeting all the criteria, and I guess doing an okay job in being in phase 2 right now.
Correct.
Great, thank you. All right, Kyle, do you have anything else? Thank you for that update.
I do not.
All right, Mark Tompkins, do you have anything?
Nothing further to add.
Dr. James.
Yeah, just to highlight a few things. The reality is we have an extraordinary achievement in our community to have so few cases. As Kyle alluded to, the R naught, or that effective reproductive rate, is close to zero. It's not. It's well below one. And if you look at why we're there, I think it's really important. One is that we haven't had a lot of transmission related to many people of fairly high risk visiting our community, and that's because our community as a whole has chosen to use face coverings. Face coverings protect everybody else. It's a critically important thing that we've done. It's been extraordinarily successful. I mean, the state didn't do that until late June, and really didn't adopt a strategy similar to ours until July 7th. We did that back in May. And that's what's protected our community largely from an influx of people that definitely have had, I'm certain there are many people that have come here with infections. But that act alone, the social distancing, but particularly the mask wearing and being widely adopted in our community, has been what has kept us from sharing the fate of many other communities. I just want to encourage people, we can't take that for granted. We have to double down on it, and we have to particularly reach out to young people, the high school and college age folks. They simply are not as diligent about it as other people, better than other people. It's a critically important thing that's protected our community. Because of that, we've had very few cases in our community. When we reviewed those cases, as Kyle briefly did, what they show is that we really have had only really the transmission has been in the home and amongst friends, family, and neighbors. The time that we need to be diligent as islanders is when we invite friends, family, and neighbors into our home. That's when the transmissions have occurred here, and that's when we let down our guard, and we can't. We need to maintain that social distance. We need to continue to wear masks, even in those settings. We have a very low rate of infection, and so it's fairly safe. But if you're going to get it, that's how you're going to get it. Don't let down your guard in that setting. And don't forget that our current recommendation, and what has always been a recommendation, when people go off island and they return, or they come here for the first time, they should quarantine for 14 days. That's what's allowed other communities to be successful, and that is still our recommendation. If people feel like they can't quarantine, then they have an additional responsibility to remain socially distanced and wear a mask all the time when they're out in public for those 14 days. Because there's growing evidence that 30% or higher have no idea they have the infection. There's now firm evidence that they are just as infectious as everyone else that has symptoms. So those asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic people are where disease comes from. Once somebody's sick, everybody knows that by then. It's really the asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic people that are the big risk, and that being very, very careful when someone new comes in, that they do quarantine if they can, and if they really can't, then they need to socially distance and wear a mask all the time. That's what will allow us to continue to have the remarkably low rates that we have. One other thing I'll caution about is the case rates per 100,000 that Kyle mentioned, that first number. Ours is down around 17, and that's well within the range of what everybody should be happy with. But I'll warn you that we are a small place, and just a few cases will put that number well up into the high risk category. So if we have a case today and a couple of cases tomorrow, we're going to go from looking great to looking terrible. That's one of the reasons that comes into the last thing I want to just mention is recommendations for schools. I had hoped to get a recommendation to the schools out last week, but every day additional significant information has come forward about the risks for kids in general. That's being really fleshed out by good fundamental research, and also experiences in other places. I will later today complete that letter of recommendation to our schools and school districts and superintendents, and it's going to ask them to not open the schools at this point in time. And there's a lot of good reasons for that I'll detail in the letter. But I don't think we should be led to believe we have a great risk going forward because of this rate per 100,000 that looks pretty good. Very few cases can make that number fluctuate wildly because we have such a small population. And The situation in our state and at the federal level is alarming, and we have a fair number of people through our state coming to visit our community and from other places in the country that are actually very high risk. So I don't think we can be complacent. I think that we need to maintain the effort we've made, and we need to be very, very vigilant to keep this disease out of our community. Thank you.
Dr. James, I have a question for you. I think we've all been getting a lot of emails with pictures of organizations that are bringing like bicyclists, and they've got 5 or 6 bicycles on the top of a van. And there's been also a lot of confusion regarding the Safe Start program in phase 2 for the travel restrictions. And I'm a little confused at the poorly written language for the travel, where it says essential travel and limited non-essential travel for phase 1 and 2 permissible activities. Isn't that basically anything? If you want to have dinner or something, you can drive your...
Excuse me, go ahead.
Well, no, I'm trying to have a better understanding. So we're getting all these questions about, hey, can you do something about these bicycle tours or kayaking tours or whatever they are? And I don't have an answer. And then if that's not supposed to happen, who's supposed to enforce that?
Well, I as you said, I get those same notifications you do from citizens that are worried about those things. And each and every time, if I have the information for the people doing it, I call them and talk with them and find out what's going on. And I can tell you that sometimes they're really substantial things. One kayak operator that I contacted, he and his wife were both high risk. He was very distraught to see a photograph of his staff not behaving in the way that they said they were behaving. I think those are useful, and he took action on that, and he needs to, for his own protection, for his staff's protection, and for our protection. Other people have said that that's a misunderstanding, that in fact they were socially distanced and they had explanations for it. But some of these folks, there has to be a higher degree of accountability and education of them. There are people out there that do have a very cavalier attitude. And the reason we are in the enviable position of not having had any deaths and having very limited spread of the disease in our community is because we've been vigilant about it. And if people are not vigilant about it, they need to know about it. I encourage people, report it to the hotline to the police and get it investigated. And if people consistently do it, we need to find them, period. So I think we can't have room. In the month of August, this is our highest risk month, we cannot let our guard down now. We have to be vigilant about it. And so I would encourage people to report things like that, and I'm going to follow up on every one that I hear about, and I hope that the police also finding people into violating it willfully and knowingly. We have to do that if we have success.
Great. And one final thing.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
This is Mark. So I think there's confusion from the general public when they see gatherings are supposed to be less than 5, yet they'll see a bike group or a different group with more than 5. The gatherings is in regards to individuals, and a lot of those industries have specific guidance documents that lays out exactly what they're allowed to do. And in some of those cases, they're allowed to have more than 5 people as part of those groups. And that is a very confusing thing. And so I don't know how to get the message out any more than that. It's just that the kayak tours, bike groups, all have specific industry guidance that they're following that may allow larger group sizes than the group gatherings for individuals.
Mark, I was going to add that too. Not all the complaints are substantial, for sure. But some are, and I think we need to take them seriously. And I do appreciate citizens bring those to our attention. People will send me pictures of 2 people walking down the street without a mask. That's one level of risk. But if it's an organized trip and they're not following the recommendations, then they do need to be held accountable. And I think that's very important. I don't think we can be lackadaisical at all about that. At the same time, most of the complaints I get aren't actionable. And oftentimes education is the most important thing to do. As I said, when I reached out to one of the operators, they were very appreciative of knowing the information that their staff may not have been doing the right thing. And so I think it is a mixed bag. I do want it to be known, though, that we need to hold those folks accountable. There are people that operate, they put people in vans, they don't wear masks. Those things actually have happened, and we need to be certain that they're not spreading disease in our community.
Great, thank you, Dr. James. And one final clarification. You said regarding the quarantine, someone goes off island, they should quarantine for 14 days, or follow social distancing and mask wearing. I just wanted to clarify, we should be wearing masks in public all the time, correct?
That's correct. I think the
So I just want to clarify that for the audience.
We looked at making it a requirement to quarantine for 14 days, and it simply isn't practical. Many people commute for work. There are people that simply can't do it. So I don't think we can have a rule that's a requirement about it. It is a recommendation, though, and for those people that can't follow it, we do ask that they are particularly diligent about social distancing and mask wearing. Obviously, everyone should be doing that, and that's been the case in our community since mid-May, and we got to keep up with that. Yeah, for sure.
I agree. I just wanted to clarify that it sounded a little bit to me like maybe you don't have to wear a mask if you haven't gone somewhere that you need to quarantine for. So I just think it's important that
That's a good clarification.
All the time. All right, Council, is there anyone else from staff who'd like to provide an update today? Brendan?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, Mr. Watson, do you have any questions for staff?
No questions from Watson.
Mr. Stevens?
No questions for me.
Great. Thank you, everyone here who's been working hard. And again, from council to all of the health staff, thank you, and the EOC staff, thank you for all your work over all these months. All right, thank you. Our next discussion is going to be discussion and action. COVID-19 CDBG CV1 grant application. We will need to schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, August 25th, assuming we are meeting August 25th with Ryan Page, Housing Program Coordinator, Mark Tompkins, Director of Health and Community Services. Mark?
I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to lead the presentation.
Sorry, Ryan. Ryan.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Good morning, Council. Thank you for having us on the agenda today. Been having my audio has been cutting out a little bit every once in a while, so someone just holler at me if you can't hear me for some reason. This is an agenda item. We're requesting the council to schedule a public hearing on August 25th. This is a component of an application for us for a grant funding opportunity that we've known about for about 2 months. I think we've mentioned this before at council meetings, and we finally have the application window open. It is a pot of money from the Department of Commerce through CDBG CV1 funds that is funded by the CARES Act. There is a specific allocation for our county and the town of Friday Harbor. The county's allocation is $34,904, and the town has been allocated $14,135, and there's a $1,000 bonus if the county and town apply together and submit a joint application as a consortium. Mark has already touched base with Duncan Wilson at the town of Friday Harbor, who is on board with submitting a joint application, and we're going to be keeping Duncan and the town fully briefed as we move forward with this application period. Sorry for the late notice on this. This is a really sort of tight turnaround time, and a public hearing is required as part of any sort of CDBG application, and we also have to provide 5-day public notice prior to that public hearing, and so that's why we're trying to sort of speedily get along through this process. So what can this pot of money fund? There's a wide variety of things. Attached to the staff report is a PDF for eligible activities is provided by the Department of Commerce. There's a long list of things on there that could be considered, from senior services activities all the way down to cleaning up graffiti or things like that. What we are proposing to submit an application for is to use this funding to provide subsistence payments, or what you would call something like rental assistance. Basically, using similar services that we do through the resource centers already, we would funnel this funding to the resource centers for clients who are in danger of losing their housing because of economic impacts due to COVID. And they would be eligible for up to 3 months of emergency payments. And there is a whole list of requirements that people have to meet in order to apply for this funding. And Commerce has provided us with things like the actual intake form that the resource centers would use and the reporting forms that we'll have to submit to Commerce. And so we feel that using the funds for this activity would be the sort of best and highest use of these funds. We've always sort of had an eye to the fall as a time where we have provided a good amount of rental assistance to all 3 islands resource centers earlier in the spring. But as we know, the need far sort of outstripped the available funding. And so this is, in our mind, a sort of welcome additional resource that we can now try to hopefully fill in the gap and extend that window that will be able to keep some people afloat. So there's plenty of information attached to the staff report as far as who would be eligible for this. The main takeaways are that people have to be low income, so they have to be at 80% or below of AMI, and they also have to specifically document that their need for these funds is a result of COVID-19. And then there's also a specific limit on how much each household can receive per month. I would also recommend that we consider putting a high emphasis on using these funds specifically for mortgage assistance. The reason for that being is that of all the other funds that the county specifically has provided to the resource centers, those have all been for rental assistance. And those funds, the funding sources for those funds did not allow for them to be used for people's mortgages. And so this would be a unique pot of money in that sense, in that it could specifically be used for that purpose, as well as additional rental assistance. And one other final detail that I'm going to mention is that one of the requirements of the program is that the money is not paid directly to the individuals who are seeking assistance. It has to be made either to the landlord or to the mortgage service company or whoever ultimately, if it was used for utility assistance, it would go to the utility company, et cetera. So that's kind of the big, broad overview. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Watson?
No questions.
Ms. Stevens?
Yeah, Ryan, when you and Mark put together that big matrix of, food, aid, what we've done, where it's going, what the need is, where it was like food and housing and a couple other things, it seems like, and I might be wrong, that's why I'm asking the question, didn't we include this money like we were going to get it and we'd apply it against housing?
I think, yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yes. So yes, Jamie, we did. This was it was a different colored block to indicate that we were made aware that this funding was potentially coming our way. We just didn't have any information on it. So yes, it was a part of that as another source of revenue to help support rental assistance and or mortgage assistance.
Well, I think it's great, and I like your recommendations, and we should get this moving.
And just to add to what Mark said, to be clear, is that we haven't really, we certainly haven't promised this to the resource centers or anything like that, because we weren't sure of the timing of it. And so, just to be clear, it's not as if they've already spent this money and now this will just be paying for things they've already done.
Thank you, and I realize that. I just wanted to be clear if it was brand new money or money we were already aware of. And I also endorse doing the consortium with the town of Friday Harbor.
Great, thank you. And I support what Mr. Stevens has just said. So at this point, I don't have any questions. I entertain a motion to set a public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I move we set a public hearing for August 25th, 2020 at 9:15 a.m. to consider an application to the Department of Commerce for CDBG-CD1 funding and receive comments on proposed activities.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to schedule a public hearing for August 25th, 2020 in Friday Harbor at 9:15 a.m. to consider an application to the Department of Commerce for CDBG CD1 funding and receive comments on proposed activities. Any additional questions for staff? All right, without seeing any, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Mark and Ryan, thank you so much for bringing this forward.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I have a follow-up question for Ryan. Ryan, thanks for putting this together. There's supposed to be 2 block grants. This is a block grant 1, and then there's supposed to be a second block grant that we got notified of. Do we have any more detail on what that can be used for and when that we might receive that?
So that second block grant, I think what you're describing is an eviction rent assistance program. I don't know that I have information as far as when specifically that's being released, but I do believe we know that that pot of money is not coming to us, but rather is going, it is being doled out to specific community action agencies in the state. And so our allocation of that funding is going to be going to the Opportunity Council, who is then going to be including it as funding to the resource centers as part of their normal programs, similar along the same lines that that they already do for eviction prevention. So that money is not something that we either have to apply for or is even going to be something that we will manage, although we'll certainly help the resource centers get something set up if they need to. That amount is $172,000 that is going to be going to the Opportunity Council. And Mark might know better than I if the Opportunity Council knows when those funds are coming through.
Yeah, so thanks, Ryan. So as Ryan said, it's $172,000 specifically for rent eviction. I have talked to Greg Winter, the executive director of the Opportunity Council, and have asked if he would be willing to come and present to the council to talk about what that program is. And we'll be looking at a date later this in August, so either next week or the week after, where if we have room on the agenda, he can come and present what that looks like and the specifics around that. And there are some limitations in it specifically for rent eviction, and there are some eligibility criteria that I don't have off all of those off the top of my head, and that's why I've asked Greg if him or his staff would come out here and present to the council what that looks like.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the work here. The next item is the added item of the EDC CARES distribution. Mike, are you going to lead this?
I can give an overview if you'd like.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I request a 10-minute break?
We can definitely have a 10-minute break. My apologies. I thought we were cranking through things. So, yes, we will now go into recess for, let's make it 11:05 and be back then. Thank